It is Friday night, a night where there is never a conflict. We are always ready to talk comic books. There is no way anybody would schedule anything that one of us would want to pay attention to, me specifically. But guess what? We suffer for our art. Our art is comics and crowdfunding, and we have two creators who are absolutely kicking ass. So I'm going to pause a little football game, and please, dear God, don't tell me anything about it in the comments. I do not want to know. So if you come on, please, no football talk to Kevin. I've turned my phone off. No comments, and let's talk comic books. So Jeff, you've been on the show before, so you know we do this 30-second pitch. When you were going to talk about magic powder at a comic convention, how would you do it to get somebody's attention?
So the first thing I would usually say is magic powder is like Lord of the Rings meets The Sopranos, or sometimes I go with it's like Dungeons and Dragons meets Breaking Bad, which I feel like is a little bit more of what it actually is. So I started switching it up to that. And right now I feel like it's the only comic book of its kind. It's crime, it's fantasy, it's a little action-packed, it's a little sad. It has a real-world feel due to Danielle's backgrounds. So it brings a little bit of everything that you're looking for that's been missing since Game of Thrones ended. Now the House of the Dragon's back. I guess there's a little bit more of a conflict, but it's still not as urban as what we got going on. It's not as contemporary style wise. So it's basically like a world like that if it, evolved for another 3,000 years.
All right, let's go with not urban and not contemporary. Josh, if you were going to get my attention on the Winchester Mystery House at a comic convention, and I know you've done some comic conventions, so I know you've got this honed, how would you do so?
So the Winchester Mystery House is based on a true story. It's about one of the most haunted mansions in the world. It was built by Sarah Winchester, the heiress to the Winchester repeating arms fortune. And after mysteriously losing her entire family and inheriting half of this massive fortune, she decided to spend the rest of her life dedicated to the dead, building this gigantic labyrinth that is meant to only house spirits, the ghosts of those who've been killed by the Winchester rifle. And it's thought that those ghosts still live in all those rooms to this very day.
Nice. All right. So I was in my own head. Will, how the heck are you?
I've survived the week. I'm in a good place.
That is a huge and beautiful thing. A very close friend said, "I'm still alive," just about 10 minutes ago. So being still alive is a huge win nowadays. So we normally go into a big deep dive, but I wanted to tell both creators I had the chance to read your comics today, both Winchester House Volume 1 and Magic Powder 1 and 2, and but just the quality of both comics is just as top notch as they can be. So before we get into it, I want to say I actually did my homework. I actually read your comics, and they are both extraordinary. So I want to tip my backwards cap to you on that. Let's go through the Labyrinth. Like we said, Jeff, you've been on and Josh hasn't yet. So let's go through the Labyrinth. How in the heck did you come upon this story first and get the rights to tell it second, Josh?
So I've been familiar with the house and some of the history behind it and the lore that's been surrounding it for the past century for quite a long time. It kind of appears in a lot of the top 10 most haunted places in America magazines and lists, and I've seen documentaries and things like that. And the way that this happened was we originally weren't even pitching a comic book. We have a board game called Floor Plan. Floor Plan is like an architectural design game where you're trying to basically design these dream houses, meeting these clients' specific needs. And we were talking to one of our game designers, John Brieger, and somehow the Winchester Mystery House came up, and he said, wouldn't it be awesome if we made a whole new version of the game that was just themed around that house? And your client is Sarah Winchester, and her demands for this house are exceptionally strange and odd, like the real houses. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this idea so much. We have to approach them with this. We have to talk to them about this. And we did. They took a meeting with us, and we started pitching this game, that we put together a really nice pitch package, and they were really impressed with how much I knew about Sarah Winchester and about the history and the kind of like deep, profound respect I have for her, which is so true. She's amazing human being. And they started asking me questions, and they said, "What did you think of the movie?" For those who don't know, there's a movie out. It's called Winchester. And I said, I love the film, but it takes place very late in her life. It's kind of near the end of the story. The house is mostly built. I said, and I feel like you missed about 3 decades worth of story, like crazy intense story of the construction of this house and of the building up of this haunting. And I said, I think her story is best told episodically, throughout time. And they said, well, don't you guys run a comic book publishing company? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, it sounds like maybe you might be the right partners to help tell that story. And I was just blown away. We ended up doing both the game and the comic. And it's been like a dream come true ever since. And originally I didn't think I would have time to write this myself. I was actually looking for a writer to hire for this, but I couldn't quite find somebody who felt as strongly about it as I did. So I decided to take it on myself, and I'm so glad that I did, because it's just been such an amazing opportunity. I'm loving it so much. I'm working on volume 2 right now, and I'm just over the moon with the success of the book. I'm blown away by it. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. Everybody has just been so supportive.
Well, like I said, I can see the passion on the page. So I am glad you didn't just kind of farm it out to somebody who would have just did, the 3 days of research and started working on a script. So I'm glad you had that, because, I always think of the Quentin Tarantino thing. The audience doesn't need to know everything about your characters, but they need to know that you do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's pretty obvious that the history of this, as I was reading it, I felt like I was in good hands. I didn't feel like this was a fly-by-night script. So I'm glad you didn't, just kind of. There's a lot of good writers at Source Point. I'm not going to say there aren't, but I'm glad that you took it because the passion is on the page, and that's the important thing.
Well, and you're doing, you're kind of going, with backer kit, which is, that's new. That's certainly not something that I've done or Kevin's done at this point. Mm-hmm. And so that's very interesting to me. Yeah. What's your experience been like?
So backer kit doing their own crowdfunding campaigns is brand new. And it's invite only right now. So you can't go there and hold a campaign just yet. It's in beta testing. So they invited a handful of companies that they really loved, that, they had done backer kits for off of Kickstarter campaigns, and they had looked at our campaigns, on Kickstarter, and thought we would be a really good partner to try to test this out. So it was months in the making. Before they launched, we had already lined up, campaigns with them and started talking about it with them and really kind of helping give our feedback on what they're doing. And it's been great. It's been a really good partnership. There is definitely there's a hump to get over, because I would say most Kickstarter backers have a backer kit account, but they either don't realize it, or there's kind of a mentality switch where they're like, oh wait, it's a new platform. I don't know. Like they don't, the idea of having to go sign up for something, new. And a lot of them don't realize that they actually don't have to sign up for something. Most of them have a backer kit, password and whatnot. But it's, I've been very lucky. The reaction's been great. I mean, if you look through the campaigns they're holding, there's only a few. There's only, I think, maybe 5 live ones right now. But they're all just doing phenomenally. They're doing really well. They're off to a really great running start. And, backer kits really bided their time. I mean, they know so much about the crowdfunding industry because they've been helping to fulfill campaigns for years now. And now they have lots and lots of great data, and they've looked so closely at other crowdfunding platforms and said, how can we do this a little bit better? How can we streamline this a little bit? So it's kind of I think, a logical step for them to take this on, and we've been excited to try it out.
Well, I know they've got some great, promotional stuff, like Backer Kit Launch, which I've used. Hey, cards on the table. I love Backer Kit. And
the email campaigns.
Yeah, the email campaigns with Backer Kit Launch.
Really intuitive. They really, especially if somebody's kind of new to this and they don't have a very specific strategy or realize, like, this is when you have a campaign, you work every single day. I mean, it's nonstop. And you don't always know what to do differently. You don't always know, like, well, geez, am I just repeating myself over and over? And one of the things that they, are really good about is they will actually kind of give you listen, on this day, you should say these things. On this day, you should repeat what you said here. On this day, you should do something new and you should target this. Like, they have a very built out strategy to help you. And I feel like that's amazing because so many people just, they put so much love and effort into getting their campaign up. And then once it's live, it's like they don't know what to do with themselves. And they feel like they're badgering their friends and family, and they don't know the best approach to take through, week 2, week 3. It gets tricky.
Yeah, I want to stay on this vein, but Tightrope had a comment. The audiences can also spot when the passion is missing, especially on topics a given audience member holds closely. And I bet there is a big audience of the Winchester House that you had to play to. So have you gotten any positive or negative criticism from people who knew of the house before they knew of Josh Warner?
Yes, lots of it.
Lots of positive or lots of negative, or just everywhere?
I've been really lucky. It's been very positive.
Okay.
I've had a lot of hugs. I've had a lot of people crying. I've had a lot of people showing me their Sarah Winchester tattoos. By the way, hi James, thanks so much for being here, man. I really appreciate that comment. It's been amazing. I had a scared moment. So sometimes, depending on, I've been on just touring nonstop this year, right? So I've just been in a different city like every other weekend. And I was in Toronto recently, where I don't expect to run into Winchester Mystery House fans at all. And one, it got me across the border when we were about to get in trouble. We ended up playing the Winchester Mystery House card, and it worked. It was, the guy's like, "Oh, you right about that place? Is it crazy? Have you ever been there?" Like, all this stuff. But then, so I'm at the booth, and someone, one of my employees comes up, and they're like, "Hey, there is a woman here asking for you by name, and she's pissed. She's really angry." And I was like, okay, in Toronto? Okay.
Does anybody ever angry in Toronto?
Right.
I didn't know that's possible unless
only when the Maple Leafs get eliminated in the playoffs.
Yeah, like the Raptors, Maple Leafs, Blue Jays losing. That's the only thing I can think of.
So I walk up, and I don't know her. I don't recognize her. Never seen her before. And she's like, you Josh Warner? I'm like, yeah, hi. It's nice to meet you. She's like, you write the Winchester Mystery House? I was like, yeah. She's like, I have a bone to pick with you. And my husband has been hearing all about it. And now you're here in front of me, so I'm going to let you have it. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. I'm bracing myself. She said, when am I getting the next issue?
Nice.
She's like, when I got to the end of issue 3, I screamed vocally, scared my whole household, and said, "What?" I was like, "Oh, trust me, it's coming. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I guess I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes."
Yeah. I was very lucky to have issue 4 coming, because that is a pretty good, not really cliffhanger, but good moment to end a comic book on. I will not spoil it for people who haven't gone in, but I can see having that reaction if I had to wait for issue 4. I told Josh, I asked him to send the PDF today, because I knew I had issues 1 and 2. I was going to pull those out. And somehow I have 2 copies of issue 2. So I don't know what I did when I ordered them or how that happened. I could have an issue 1 in a different box.
Did you get both A and B cover?
I know they're the same cover. They're the same cover. Like, so I don't know what I did. I don't know what I did. You know, like it was at the beginning of the pandemic. I was drunk and tired and scared. Who knows what I was doing? You know, like I'm buying from Midtown Comics. I'm gonna keep them alive. And oh, there's Source Point Press. Heck yeah, I'm buying that. I'm buying that. So I don't know what I did, but I appreciate you letting me catch up on the story. As you go through BackerKit and you're working with them, what do you think they've taken that are not necessary? Because I love Kickstarter and I am very happy with the fact that it exists. But Will and I are also happy that there's now a zoo and a crowdfunder and a BackerKit, because, you know, kind of like having fertile soil in many different farms is better for farmers, I think. So
Sure,
what do you think that they've looked at what Kickstarter maybe has not fixed or been a little stagnant on and maybe improved on? I don't want to like rag on Kickstarter because I wouldn't be here without them. But what do you think BackerKit has done that maybe they've done a little better at this point?
I think the differences are subtle. I think that, but they're there, and I think it comes down to how intuitive and streamlined the process is. Setting up the campaign and the launch page and managing everything in real time, and seeing how your campaign is doing, how your efforts are doing, and seeing exactly where all of your traffic is coming from. It's all laid out in a way that's very, very easy to use and understand. Okay. You don't feel lost. You're not searching for anything. It's very intuitive interface, and I've been really happy with it. And you know, it's this particular campaign is scary for me because out of all of the campaigns BackerKit has done so far, this is the only comic book one. This is the very, very first comic book campaign that BackerKit has ever done. So there is zero precedent for comic book success, I guess, on their platform.
So you've actually had the worst comic book campaign ever on BackerKit at $18,000. So that is the floor that we as other creators can expect, right?
Yeah, this is the bar, and you just got to blow right past it. Yeah. And you know, so far I'm seeing a very similar trend to how a Kickstarter campaign would go as far as the ebb and flow. You know, you get a really great running start on the first day. Your second day, you're pushing, but it's you know, you're still seeing the results, and then you're terrified for the next 6 days in a row, and you know, and then you start seeing your efforts pay off again. And I'm sure at some point we can talk a bit about some of those efforts, like some of the particular things I did to bring backers. But it's I'm happy with it so far. I'm really pleased.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, because I'm on the page and I'm looking at the floor plan. You know, we all kind of get the names of certain backers who are with us over and over and over again. Do you feel like this campaign is a nice even mix of your games followers and your comics followers, or do you feel like you're getting more of one or the other?
Excellent question, and the answer might surprise you. What's really nice about BackerKit is already connected to every Kickstarter we've ever ran, right? So I can see exactly how many of the backers of this campaign have backed any of our Kickstarters in the past, and I can see which ones of them came from games, which ones came from comics. And what's wild about this particular campaign is the majority of backers are brand new people. Wow. Not only are they brand new to me, you know, to Source Point or any Oxeye Media company's campaigns, they're also new to crowdfunding. Period. Like for a lot of them, this is the first time they've ever backed anything, and that is really humbling for me, because it's like, wow, I'm reaching a new audience and breaking new ground and convincing people to come try out crowdfunding, and it's kind of cool. But I think it's specifically because I have put all of my efforts into marketing the Supernatural aspect of this and targeting like true crime, fans and fans of like paranormal stuff and history, and I'm not aiming for comic book fans or game fans.
Mhm.
That being said, I'd say like out of the people who are showing up, it's a very even split. Most of them show up because they've heard of the house in general. But what I can say is that the game fans are being more negatively vocal. So it feels like there's a lot of game fans, but really when you kind of look at it, it's so what the game fans complaint is that there isn't a game only tier. And that is by design, because the idea being that this is not a campaign for the game. This is a campaign for the Centennial Edition of the graphic novel. And if you would like, you can add on the game, which is coming out anyway, and our gift to you is the opportunity to get it before it hits stores, months before it hits stores. You'll be like the first to own the game. If you want to wait for the game, you can, and you don't have to back the campaign. But wow, have people been vocal about it? Oh my God, there's people who are getting angry, like downright angry about it. And we kind of like, we talked to Backer Kid about it because they were like, do you guys want to change this? We're seeing like a lot of complaints. And I'm like, I think we'll stand our ground on this, and we'll just explain ourselves and be like, this isn't, the campaign is for the comic, and you can get the game if you want. It's end of story, but every single tier will include the comic book. And it's a great deal. The $45 tier has the game and the book. The book's $25, so it's like getting $10 off the game. And that is by far the most popular tier. So I think it's doing fine. I'm not too concerned.
Yeah, and $25 for a 4-issue trade paperback is a perfectly solid price point as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I kind of have a problem with Kickstarter, is that insight into your previous backers. Because if we want to message our previous backers, we have to go to each campaign, which means, because Kevin backs me, the sucker, he's going to get, 4 messages from my 4 previous campaigns about the new campaign that he's already learned about 4 previous times. So it's, with the backer kit, you can message them all at once, and you get that insight into them. You're like, oh, this is, your backers are coming from this campaign and this campaign. It's really cool. They're really great with the metrics. So I'm glad that those metrics are really working as part of their, crowdfunding stuff too. That's really cool.
Yeah. Because I worry about that. Actually, my dad woke up one day and he's like, why'd you send another update out 2 days in a row? And I'm like, no, that's from the other campaign.
Yeah. And if
a
you're
lot of people that think that.
Yeah, so you'll get like a Magic Powder, Jeff Schiller from Magic Powder #1 sent you an update. Jeff Schiller from Magic Powder 2 sent you an update. And but didn't I just back Magic Powder 3? But when you backed a lot, you know the game. But as a creator, you also try not to do it too much. What are some of the things you guys do to try to counteract that feeling as a creator that you're over emailing your previous backers? Do you guys have anything for somebody who's watching as a creator? I sometimes will change like the images I send, and like the 6 ones, like two updates will have 1 photo, 2 will have another, and 2 will have a third, just to make it just like, sorry guys, you're going to have to read the same thing, but at least you can look at something different that's pretty.
Yay, Ludo.
Yeah, no, I definitely, like you said, change a couple things. Not so much the image, probably more the text, just because I already have the image in mind. But yeah, sometimes I probably do both. It depends, because at the beginning of a pre-launch, within that 1 or 2 day area, I guess I'll spread it out. You know what I mean? But like, say now I'm in the middle of a campaign. First week I contacted my first 3 Kickstarters, but now I've only hit 1 up this week. Next week I'll probably hit up another one. Next week I'll hit up another one, instead of just hitting them all up over and over and over. Because like you said, I mean, I don't know if it's 50% over, whatever, but yeah, I'm not trying to annoy everybody. They already know what's going on. Enough people are following that I know they took those links already. So it's like, if you're not getting those follower numbers on your campaign or the backer numbers, then you better start sending it out a little more probably.
Yeah, but there's nothing worse than that email the day after it closes saying, hey, when is that campaign you've been talking about going to launch? You're like,
But the best feeling is when someone hits you up, like say on Twitter or something, like, "Oh man, I forgot," or you're like, "I didn't even know you were running a campaign." And these are people you talk to literally every day on Twitter, and it's like, man, is the algorithm that effed up? Like that someone like, I mean, I even have it in my name kind of, where it's like, "Oh, Jeff's on Kickstarter right now," and it's like they still don't know sometimes, and like, yeah, it's so like, yeah, that's the worst is when they missed it, but the best is like right when you get them at the end, and they're like, "Oh, I got on." I'm like, yes, thank God.
Actually, that brings up a really good question. You said that the ebb and flow is pretty similar to Kickstarter. You have a pretty steep climb at the beginning, a more gradual climb throughout the campaign, and then the bump at the end typically. So I'll be curious to see if that kind of holds true.
So I've been taking a few different tactics to try to kind of keep the email campaigns fresh, and I'm really, really happy with how it's going. And I'll kind of share some of this with you guys because this might be useful. So I've been doing all of the Fan Expo locations around the country. And we are, as a company, are one of the biggest sponsors of Fan Expo. So all of the badges at the shows have like our IPs on them, which is really cool. But one of the other things that we have been able to do through our sponsorship packages, we rent badge scanners. And what they do is you scan the badge of an attendee and you get their contact info. And these are all extremely warm leads because, it's the info that they use to get their ticket to get into Fan Expo. So, it's active info. And it's also, they're at a Comic-Con. So they're likely to be your type of person, right? Your type of person. So it's a lot different than like paying for somebody who isn't interested in you to scroll past your Facebook post, right?
Right.
And then what we did was for weeks and weeks and weeks before leading up to this campaign, I put thousands of ash cans, Winchester Mystery House ash cans, out on a table at every show every day, and gave them out for free in exchange for a badge scan. But every single time I would talk to the person, tell them about the story, tell them about the history, get them into it. I would sign it for them. And a lot of them, they only stopped because they heard something was free. They weren't necessarily going to come to our booth. They weren't necessarily going to make a purchase. And sometimes they would, stick around and make a purchase, and that's great. Sometimes they would just leave. But either way, they left with something free that's not going to end up in the garbage, something that signed, a memory, an experience, and having FaceTime with me for like a good amount of time. And I literally spent my entire time, from beginning till end of the show every day, just doing that and talking with these people. And then what happens is the convention compiles all the information from all of our badge scans, and they give it to us, and we get all that info and we attach to that show. So when we made the landing page for the backer kit, what I did was I sent out an email to every single person who visited our booth and got a badge scan at that city. So everybody from Boston got an email, and it was a very personal one from me, and it was from the company, but it had, a quote from Joshua Warner, writer of the Winchester Mystery House, and it had a picture of the booth and a picture of me, and for instant recognition, like, oh yeah, I was at that booth and I did see that guy. Oh, I know what this is. He gave me a book, and it's me saying, I loved chatting with you. I had such a great time hanging out with everybody. I love talking about the Winchester Mystery House with you. Thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed the ash can. Now we're about to launch this. I wanted you to be the first to know about it. If you liked what you read and you want to jump on board, you can click this button and you'll be notified upon the launch. So I just kept doing this for weeks.
Did you find it was a problem that your postscript read "F.U. Red Sox Tigers rule"? I thought when I read that, I thought maybe that was just a small mistake on your part. But hey, if it worked.
So here's our previous campaign.
Sold it.
we had like 300 something people sign up in advance, to get notified, and then check out the number on this one.
Wow.
Nice.
That's not bad, right?
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
So we did that. I did that for every city. And then once we launched, I put all of them into one big thing. So I have like all of our Fan Expo friends in one big email blast, and then all of the crowdfunding friends in another one. And then we have like our regular customer, email sign up base too. And across that's like 50,000 people.
Yeah. And I think you've got such a floor that you haven't had your games people or your comics people be part of the tsunami, that this last 11 days could be extraordinary for you guys.
I hope so.
Tyrope says, if Josh followed the Tigers, he would know you can't say they roll right now. Yes, that was definitely a geography joke, not a knowledge of baseball stadiums by me joke, because I don't know any of that anymore. 162 games is too long of a season for me anymore. But all right, Josh, hang with us if you can. Let's get into Magic Powder, Jeff. Yeah, you talked about like Lord of the Rings and stuff. I don't know why. I think I thought it was gonna hold more on the comedy side, but I really liked the grittier, darker tone than I expected of this. Not that there weren't some panels that I didn't think, had a little bit of gonzo action that kind of made me snicker, but I liked what you're doing. So please, with Magic Powder, let's in case somebody's new, they weren't here at the beginning. Let's reintroduce it and let's talk about how it came to be.
All right, so Magic Powder is essentially a Dungeons and Dragons type of fantasy world, sped up into, almost a current day, but it's not really a contemporary time. It's almost like it could be any time almost. It's like when you watch the Batman the Animated Series. You can't tell if it's the 50s or it's the 90s, that kind of thing. Like there's going to be different kinds of technology that don't really go together. It has nothing to do with our world, basically. Right. But it's just like, almost like a futuristic, I guess you would say, version of a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy world. And then within that, it takes place in a city with no laws. And then the main characters are the people who've taken over that city and control that city. And an elf who wants to control that city from another, he comes from a whole different country. Elves aren't really welcome that much in Fez, which is where it takes place, because they're basically a bunch of straight-laced characters and they're not really into drugs and stuff. If there are elves in the town, usually they're there because they party in a town pretty much nearby and they're coming to get drugs, or they're like reporters trying to tell other people in the elf country, Jatir, and the city there, like what's going on in this crazy, outlaw town of Fez, basically, which was an old, like back in the day, like thousands of years ago, this was the elf capital, but they found, more fertile land somewhere else after they won wars and they decided to move on. And so in some ways, like some elves still hold Fez as something to them, so they want to know about it. That's another reason why the reporters are there and stuff.
So how far back do you go in your research for this? Are you like watching like noir movies from the 40s and 50s, or where did you go back to find the elements you wanted for this series?
I mean, like, it's hard to say, like, going backwise. I feel like I'm always watching these things. Like, my whole life is really like, I love obviously just classic films. Now that television's having its golden age, while I was growing up, pretty much all the best shows I've already watched a million times over and over. Every season I was catching them as they were coming out, rewatching the episodes, waiting all week, stuff like that. But as far as like what got me to really make this, it was a show called Gomorrah from Italy. And I was watching that because I was running out of things to watch during the pandemic. And you see Italy how it is now, at least this part of Naples and stuff, Scampia, and it's just like, a project. There's these projects called the Sales, and that's basically almost like just where it all takes place. And it's a bunch of drug fighting, everybody who lives there, stuff like that. The main characters are all from the Camorra, which is another kind of Italian, mafioso, other than like La Cosa Nostra and stuff like that. But what really got me was like seeing the way they lived on top of like ancient Rome, basically. So like you have project buildings and all these, people fighting over basically scraps on what used to be the most important place in the world at one time, the capital of everything, of human existence. So like that's what kind of like got me really into it. And then luckily when I was looking for an artist, I found Danielle, who's from Italy, and he's like, I never seen Gomorrah, but it's like, I was like, you don't have to, I'm sure, man. Like you live there, so you don't live in like that part of Italy or anything, but he knows, what I'm talking about. And when I write stuff, and it's not all Italy, there's like, hints of New York, stuff like that, and then just other fantasy worlds and things, whatever we come up with. But like his backgrounds, I can tell, like, he kind of gets exactly what I mean. Like it's amazing working with an artist that great. So yeah, I would say it's more like almost contemporary things have got me to go this way, because like you said, it's not funny really. It's a big thing is there's not really a main character. I don't want people to know who the main character is, or if there is one, because I don't want anyone to feel safe about any character anytime. I don't want there to be like a plot armor thing where like people are like, oh, this guy's fine, even though this guy does sorcery, or this guy does, nobody's safe at any time. That's why at the back of every issue there's a RIP section for the characters, because you just never know who's going to be there, that kind of thing. So you got to respect the dead or whatever. But
so how do you organize that many disparate plot lines and families and actions going on? Because I did feel like there were about 5 different let's say moves being made by people in just 2 issues.
Yeah, I think I don't know. It was just a lot of planning ahead. Like I probably planned it out for at least a year before I even thought about putting the first script down, and then meeting Danielle and stuff like that. So the whole world, I had to flesh it out. I had to flesh out the history of these creatures, where they come from, why they exist. And then the actual characters' motivations and stuff like that. Had to, like you said earlier, making characters feel like we knew them, even if no one else knows them yet. Because that's the thing, like you said, there is a lot going on. But I think I was inspired by something George R.R. Martin said. Like he wrote Game of Thrones because television studios were telling him, he had to like cut out all the characters. He had too many characters and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, man, I could put as many characters as I want in my stuff too. So that's kind of the thing. And I also wanted it to feel like, you don't know what's going on. I wanted it to kind of be a mystery, because the first 6 issues to me is just setting up the world. So like you're coming in, you don't know what the hell's going on. That's kind of a big part of it. I wanted it to be confusing kind of in a way. Like, what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, are you going to write 60% of it, get us all addicted, and then just stop writing it? Is that
I mean, if I become
what you're telling us?
If I become a billionaire like that asshole, maybe. But no, probably not. You know what I mean? It's too much fun for me. Like, I mean, I feel like he got to a point where he wasn't having fun anymore. Yeah. But writing like just text and stuff like that, like I've written, just novel attempts and, short stories and stuff like that. But writing a comic book is so much more fun to me. So I don't think I'll ever have that problem. I mean, he clearly likes to write still. He's writing screenplays. He's doing, all these other things. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'll be fine. I'll keep you guys hooked. I won't leave you hanging. Not on purpose. I die like berserk. That's all that.
I did tell my wife when she asked that question, I said, well, he can write a 700-page novel and make $6 million, or he can write a 200-page outline and make 150 million. So I guess we know what he's gonna do.
And he's not getting any younger. I was in his 70s. He's almost 80. So like, I'm not mad at George R.R. Martin. And the show kind of ruined the ending of that anyway. So like, don't worry, everybody. Right now, I don't have an ending planned for like the whole world or anything. But like, as far as like, I have a lot of story arcs planned, and I know where they're gonna go and stuff like that. I don't want to tell anybody who's going to be in the later.
Yeah, perfect world. How many arcs would this be? And since we're hitting issue 3, how many issues would the first arc be when you complete it?
So when I hit up Danielle originally, I told him I wanted to do 6 issues, and like then we'll see where we're at. That's the whole story arc to me. Like I know exactly how it's going to end. I don't know if I would say it's a cliffhanger, but it's it's more like an ending where it's like, oh, season 2's coming kind of thing,
right?
Because there's going to be a lot of characters like. All the creatures you've seen so far, like there's still not even a lot of the main players. Like there's dragons and stuff like that. They don't live in Fez because Fez is where we start out, But eventually I'm going to sprawl the whole world out and you're going to see everything. Like all the other creatures. Because like, elves run a big part of the world. So, in the way I describe it, I'm like, oh, elves run the world. But like there were other more power, or maybe not more powerful, but equally powerful creatures that, kind of have truces with, that kind of thing. So we'll see what they're doing. There's giants that live on their own continent because it's not really safe for anyone else to live there, and who they work with and why they exist and stuff like that. They're not really criminals or anything, but they need magic power to grow their crops and stuff like that. And it's a whole thing. And the whole history of fairies and giants goes back further than anything else. And that's a whole other thing that we'll get into. But I forget what the question was now. Kind of.
No, that was a great answer.
Story arcs.
Quite honestly, though, but that just tells us that you've got a nice chunk, and then you're gonna see where you are from there, and many places you could go after if you choose to. That was a good answer, even if you don't remember the question.
Well,
it kind of came back to me. Sorry about that.
I've kind of got a question about plotting, because I've always been fascinated. I mean, looking back, if you look back at team books like in the 80s, Paul Levitz has this thing they call the Levitz paradigm. You have your A story, your B story, and your C story, and the way he would promote those stories through issues. And I'm curious how you kind of, you've got your A through line, your B, C, D, however many plots you've got going on. Are you laying those out per issue and then delving into them and trying to develop a certain number of pages for them, or are you letting them breathe more? Is it more organic? How are you doing that?
Okay, so I would say right before I even started the arc, I planned it all out because I'm used to writing screenplays. That's where I would say was my main focus before I ever focused on comics. So I would always do an entire treatment, which is like writing out the screenplay as paragraphs. You know what I mean? This is what the scene is. Don't format it really. You just write it out as paragraph. So I basically did that. I did a treatment of the entire story arc in my mind. And then, I just go issue by issue and I decide what needs to be said here. Like in the second issue, you see why an elf did something in the first issue for another elf. You know what I mean? You kind of, you don't get that in the first issue. You're like, why is this guy helping this guy? And then you find out in the second issue why he owed him a favor, and it was a pretty big favor. So I knew that was going to happen in that way. You know what I mean? Even before the second issue was written or anything, I had that planned out in the treatment. Like in the third issue, I knew the drill was coming out, like that you see on the cover. I've been waiting to get to this, since I started it out. I wanted to have like a scene where dwarves get to use their fantasy powers and basically crime fight, a gunfight situation. So, it's something you would never see in any kind of like Fargo or, Peaky Blinders or anything like that. You know what I mean? This is something that just could never be done anywhere else. So I'm finally getting to do that because we've set the world up enough that I can get fantasy with it, fantastical with it, whatever. So I'm pretty excited. But I would say I go arc first, issue by issue. And like right now, I write the whole third issue out, right? So me and Danielle are still working on it. So every time he sends me a page, I still gotta, in my mind, redo. I'm still editing, and then so I don't work on the like actual principal fourth issue script until I would say there's like 5 pages left to be finished by Danielle on this. So I really know what I want because sometimes I'll change things, and then certain characters maybe I like to see more now. And so I want to add them and stuff. Things happen almost like where I've read about things like, say, Breaking Bad, for instance, where Aaron Paul was supposed to die in the first season and he becomes Jesse Pinkman, who gets his own spinoff movie and all these things. So it's to me, it's always evolving in my mind. So nothing is set in stone until we print it. And then that's the world. Then I gotta work around.
And you gotta live. If it's a mistake, you gotta live with it at that point. Yep. So Tyra put in the comments: world building, a big challenge, a big payoff, and best of success to you. And one thing that I think really both these projects we're talking about tonight have is expansive world building, where you trusted the audience to not give it all to us immediately. It's sort of like you found the story within your world building on both of these, whereas I think both of you could have started your comics with, a 400-year history, and
the
by
crawl.
the Star Wars boat, baby.
But you're crawling in the desert looking for water, and by the time we get to it, we're kind of dead-eyed. And I really want to, applaud both of you for just throwing us into your worlds and getting into the story and letting your audience catch up to you. I think that's what I like. I love world building where I am trusted as a reader to figure it out, as opposed to being spoon-fed. So I think you both did a great job to it. And we put it up earlier, but I just need to read it. Blake says, "I need to see the dragons." So
you do need to see them.
We're gonna do that. Let's check out the page for a little bit. I'm gonna pull it up.
Let's do it. But as far as that goes too, I was inspired by the Dark Souls games, where they don't tell you shit when you're playing them, and you better either die or get the fuck out. So that really inspired me to just write my story like that. Kind of like, if you don't like it, go ahead and leave. I mean, you can come back issue 20 when we got it all fleshed out for you.
Right.
But I also put the there's a Fez Report, it's called, and it's the lore, So, it used to just be digital and everybody would get it. And now I even connected it to the digital comics. So there's deluxe versions when you get issue 1 and 2 now, and it's at the back. And my sister put that together with me. Like I wrote it and she did all the clippage kind of stuff and use Danielle's art. So the Fez Report is all the lore that we fill in all these blanks, like who are these people, why are they important, stuff like that, for the people that do want a little bit more fleshed out characters. So right now with this page, we have the lore package. Instead of doing a variant cover, I just wanted to print the lore book, so you get more story instead of just the same comic with a different cover. I kind of feel like, it's not worth double the price to do that to people. So that's why this time, I don't know if a lot of people understand that, because that's not as popular as variant ones have been for me in the past. But yeah, the lore book, I feel like, that's where it's at for people that want more Magic Powder. You've got to get that lore book. The Fez Report, it's called. And even issue 4 will explain what the Fez Report even is. Like, how is this even possible? Who's writing this? How could they see all these things? You know what I'm saying? But there's actually an explanation behind it all that I've been waiting to show you guys. So I'm looking forward to that as well. That's part of the whole planning process. But yeah, there's so many big characters. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just enjoy movies like Snatch, I guess, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, where it's like nonstop, boom, 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 an hour and a half, and you can introduce 20 characters that you fall in love with. Like, if you could do that in an hour and a half, I could do that in 20 issues. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I think I just can't, because there's no comic book to me. And I love to read comics, but there's nothing that reminds me of Magic Powder, which is a big inspiration of me making it. Like, I don't know, like Sin City kind of a little bit, but that's real focused on one character piece at a time, And then, I don't know, there's a lot of fantasy stuff out there. Shadowrun doesn't really have comics, but it's like a board game that is contemporary fantasy with a lot of elements I have. Well, that's cyberpunk, and I didn't want to go that way really. So like, there's not a lot of cyberpunk because I didn't want to rip off Shadowrun, because I do love Shadowrun, don't get me wrong, but it's also not a comic book, or not that I know of anyway. I know D&D has their comics now and stuff. But yeah, so that's a big reason I think Magic Powder is kind of drawing in a lot of people who I know that have never backed comics before, have never even read comics, don't own comics, because it's just, it's a little something different. And so I'm trying to keep that freshness for everybody, every issue, And so I know a lot of times I'm talking about my comic and I don't bring up a lot of comic references because I just don't feel like there are many that go with it.
Yeah, Richard Hewitt says, I've so pictured it being Guy Ritchie, Snatch-esque. Brilliant.
Hey, Rich in the house. See, Richard, he got the comic from Sadie out in England. I have some people I send the comic to in England, and that's the first comic he ever had in his life. He said it was Magic Power 1 and 2. He just got them like within the last month, and he's out there. He lives out there in England. He's like, man, my first 2 comics, he read them. He said he loves them. He's always out here retweeting me now. And like, yeah, like, it's just cool. Like that. That's what I'm talking about, really.
Welcome to the wonderful world of comics, Richard. The water is fine.
Yeah, jump in, man. Yeah.
Now, they aren't all as good as Magic Powder, but a lot of them get close.
There's some greatness out there. There's so much greatness out there. Like Do a Power Bomb is one of these things I'm hooked on right now. There's just a million great comics. Tights. I just got my Tights reward survey the other day. I love Tights. Tricovia. I mean, there's a million comics. The thing is, like, there's not enough Magic Powder to get your fix. Like, that's only enough to start a pile. You got to start building your pile now. And so, like, I just love being someone that brings people into the comic world, Yeah.
Richard says, yep, newbie here, but what a comic to start with for my first. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I just feel like, honored that people, like, even like Justin was saying earlier, like, yeah, like a lot of people are coming to him, getting their first fix right now. And it's just cool, man. Like, I don't know. It's something about it.
Well, and yeah, I'm like, let's stop for a second. What was your first comic around the table? What was your first comic that you read that grabbed you and addicted you? Because I can tell you it was, for me, X-Men 194, Nimrod, friggin' Rogue takes Colossus and Nightcrawler's powers to fight Nimrod. Friggin', I didn't know what was going on, but I knew it was the greatest thing I had ever been involved with my entire life. And I'm still reading comics, from 13 to 47 from that one friggin' issue. And Rogue is still my favorite character. So
Rogue's a badass. See, with me, I guess I'll go next because on the screen we're gonna pass it to that side. But so to me, like, I love X-Men, Ninja Turtles, Batman, all that stuff, but it's because of the cartoons. The real thing that made me go to the comic shop and start buying issues and like actually finding a local comic store was The Walking Dead, honestly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is also obviously heavily influenced by movies, like I am. So that was a big part of it, I think, too.
Josh, what about you?
Silver Surfer number 75. That has the embossed chrome Silver Surfer on the cover, and then the background is just like 100 characters. And that was me as a kid, you know, total blind, by zero clue what world I was in, who all these characters were. You know, it's because it's all the cosmic Marvel characters, right? So it's not even stuff you're going to see in cartoons usually. So I was just thrust into the middle of it, and I was just enamored. I was like, I need to know everything about these characters. And the next thing I did as a kid was got all those like those Marvel like character guides that they had, the single issue ones, you know. And that's how I learned, you know, about half these characters I was reading. And from there it was like Guardians of the Galaxy, but the team that was like set in the future, you know, not anything like current. And then it was all X-Men for years after that. I was hooked, and it was just it was all X-Men for a long time.
Yeah. Claremont made a lot of cultists in that time period, and God love him for it.
Yeah.
Will, you're next, but Tight Rod said Nimrod. Sentinels in the future named it, not thinking it would ever be sent back in time to a place where its name would elicit laughter. Yes, that is very true. And we got another Rogue fan in the house. God bless you.
For me, man, I got hooked early. I mean, I must have been 5 or 6, but I remember picking up, or somebody, mom probably picked up an issue of Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Green Lantern, Green Arrow was like 120s, 130s, where, you know, of course I think he's falling to his death because his ring's fallen off his finger, which don't get me started. But, you know, it's just some goofy, you know, early 80s, late 70s kind of thing. But you know, the Avengers, and growing up in rural Arkansas, I probably studied those official handbooks of the Marvel Universe more than I studied anything else. I mean, I could almost quote some of those big art. That's why I wear glasses to this day. Thank you, Marvel, right? Reading all that text. But I love those official handbooks. I think I've got the omnibuses back over there somewhere. But,
I can see them.
We gave my daughter one of those when she was like just learning how to read, and she knows so many more characters than I do because she just memorized front to back that entire thing. Do you know this is somebody's sister who married this person and then changed into a man? I'm like, I don't know any of that. That must have been in like the 12 years where I was out of it. But God bless you. God bless you for knowing it. I believe you.
Well, and all the pseudoscience that they would use to explain how all the powers work. You're like, cool, that would work in real life. No, you know.
I just love that Stan Lee got sick of trying to learn that pseudoscience. He was just like, mutants.
Well, mutants, yeah.
You know, there you go.
I was like, I read this and I was like, that's freaking brilliant. You know, Mark Grunwald, Peter Sanderson, whoever wrote this, it's brilliant. You know, like, what is magic? It's energy not on the electromagnetic spectrum. I went, oh, hey, that's freaking brilliant. I never thought of it that way. Cool.
Yeah. And Tightrope says the classic panels where two characters are in a high action moment spouting half a paragraph to each other during a single punch. Yeah. That might not have aged as well, but gosh darn it, that is some good comics. You know, like it's great, you know. I'm reminded of John Byrne wanting to quit the X-Men when he drew 2 pages that were supposed to show how strong Colossus is. And it is him grabbing a tree and pulling it straight out of the ground. And then Chris Claremont wrote like 500 words about this incredible struggle of man versus nature and mutant versus the anchoring. And he's about to crumble. And finally, and John Byrne is like, I quit. I'm quit.
That's hilarious.
But
first
comic
oh, my bad. I was gonna say the first comic I actually remember reading, it was like a Namor comic, and I think he was trying to mess with the Kingpin, and the Kingpin sent out the Rhino and started kicking his ass and knocked him into like a fountain, and that was the end of the fucking Rhino at that point.
Yeah, because he got the power from the water.
Yeah, and then the first comic I remember like owning, like I had a Warlock comic, like, and it was a foil cover, and I don't remember the number. But like, yeah, those are the first like old ones. Like I remember having, like I never like collected at the time, like my brother would have a comic or I would have a comic or my cousin would randomly have some Batman. Like he had like Batmans that were like not even the same series, like
Right.
you would just read anything. But the thing we had too was the cards. So like you'd have the whole X-Men set. You could read all their origin stories off the back of the cards. And so like, I don't know, because I think my dad thought, the cards would be collector's item, like worth some money. So that's why he bought us the cards and stuff. And I don't think they're worth anything, but I still got all my cards. So that's pretty awesome.
Actually, there was a book that just came out on those Jim Lee X-Men cards, which is really cool because it reprints a lot of the art, at a larger size, which it was just really cool. That brings back a lot of.
I thought that Jim Lee was going to make it. I wonder what happened to him.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So like,
he'll make it one day. He'll make it one day.
Yeah, if he sticks with it, I do think he'll finally hit his groove. Well, let's do another quick 30 seconds on each project in case people have come in. I don't want to close it off without giving people another chance. We're still on Magic Powder, so Jeff, once again, in case somebody just got here, how would you introduce Magic Powder to a complete newbie?
All right, so Magic Powder is the Breaking Bad meets Lord of the Rings that every comic book fan has always wanted and never had a chance to really read. And so here it is. Now we're 3 issues in. The entire world is under turmoil. You'll see that on the very first page. Even when you go to the Kickstarter, the campaign page is just a mess because the entire city is just a mess right now. No one knows who's running what. No one knows who's going for who. Everything's just, almost anarchy basically at this point.
Hold on.
If you like college football, we got that for you too. And that's pretty much it, I would say. So it's basically, the Scorsese, Tarantino, Grand Theft Auto, all these things that I just grew up loving, mix them with a fantasy genre because I felt like it never really been done. And now it's a comic book. And hopefully, I don't know, I just want to make it forever. Hopefully Danielle wants to make it forever too. And that's going to be that.
Awesome. Well, hey, moving around, Josh, can you give us a quick pitch to anybody that maybe come in late about the Winchester House?
Yeah, so the Winchester Mystery House is based on a true story. It's about one of the most haunted mansions in the world. It was the inspiration for Stephen King's Rose Red, Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House, Disney's Haunted Mansion. It is basically the original American haunted Gothic mansion that spawned an entire subgenre of fiction. It is about Sarah Winchester, who was the heiress to the Winchester Repeating Arms fortune. And after losing her family and inheriting half of the massive rifle company's fortune, she spent the rest of her life building this gigantic mansion to house all of the ghosts of everyone who had ever been killed by a Winchester rifle. And they never stopped building until the day she died, which was 100 years ago as of September 5th. And now we are celebrating the centennial of the house's completion. And it's thought that all those ghosts are still living in this house to this day. And that's right now, it is sold out through Simon & Schuster. It is sold out through Diamond Comic Distributors. It is sold out at Source Point Press. The only place you can get any of the comics or the trade paperback is if you can find a retailer who still has some, or you can come to the backer kit.
Or I have an extra issue of number 2. Sitting on a gold mine accidentally.
I forgot to mention this too. Yeah. For anybody who's interested, we have some beautiful covers. You should see the bee covers that Ryan Quackenbush did. Oh my goodness. But anyway, Hot Topic very graciously decided to make t-shirts of all of the comic book covers. So if you go to hottopic.com and just type in the Winchester Mystery House, we have a whole bunch of shirts. It's really cool.
That is awesome. All right, gentlemen, you can hang with us. At this point, we're going to talk about the campaigns for the projects that are still live that we've already talked about. We're going to do this for you guys as long as you're still live as well. You can hang with us, or if it's dinner time or bedtime, you can also go eat or sleep, depending on your situation.
I just backed Jeff's campaign. Now let's see who else you got for me. I went back.
That's what we got. We got this is the Explain Yourself bump in real time.
Yeah,
living it. That's
All
awesome.
right.
All right. Okay, you got your sweet tooth with you because we got chocolate and tea.
That's right.
G.E. Gallus is the picture of Dorian Gray chocolate bar. This is a comic creator, but her side hustle, her business that pays the bills, is making chocolates based on books in the public domain. And this new chocolate is strawberries and juniper berries and a dark chocolate. There's a matching tea, and there's also probably 10 different chocolates that you can taste in that. Go check out that page because
That is so cool.
I see that posted on Twitter, and I didn't even really kind of get what it was. And now that you explained it to me, I'm like, man, that is like that's something really different, you know.
And she really like goes down deep in the weeds. The Sherlock Holmes uses Earl Grey tea in the chocolate and a couple other things. There's a matcha tea, and it's all based on like reading the novel, seeing what the characters are into. Because the strawberries and juniper for Dorian Gray, one of the characters likes to snack on those, I believe she told us. So that's why she built the chocolate around it. It's a super cool campaign, really unique and really interesting. And we got chocolate, so that's extraordinary. And we had Chucky P and Sean Barber on for the Belial. Belial is kind of like the first ruler of hell, who has decided to take it back over from Lucifer and the four horsemen of the apocalypse. The cool thing about this that we learned last week is that was Sean's idea, and Chuck came in and decided to make it a balls out comedy. And that was kind of fun to see how, the writer took it over and had this crazy idea to make it this very dark story into a comedy. But, Chuck's a huge friend of the show. Great dude.
I just got to be on a show with them both, actually. And I don't even think it was planned to be both of them. It was just supposed to be Chuck. And then, everybody was crashing the party. It was on Blake's Buzz the other night, man. And Belial, it's just stuck in my head now all the time. I keep thinking about all the things they were telling. It's just a totally that's the comedy. We were talking about how my thing is not a comedy. If you're looking for a comedy comic, that's the one right now. It's Clerks in Hell or something like that,
Yeah, and some demons who don't always wear the top parts of their clothes. So if you're into that you get it with Belial, and that's okay too.
They were explaining how there's Kickstarter logos over all the nudity to make sure they can run their Kickstarter campaign. I'm like, that's genius. Yeah.
But it almost brings more attention to it. So it's actually totally a really smart thing to do.
Yeah. The fact that Kickstarter was cool with it is nice.
Yeah. Russell Nolte is ending his Ichabod Jones 4-volume story. So this is the final one. It's one of my two favorite things that Russell does. Pixie Dust and Ichabod is my favorite two things. And Ichabod is either an insane man who's murdering a bunch of innocent people, or the chosen one who's saving us all from I don't know, whatever's coming. And I've only read 3 volumes, so I'm still not sure. And there's really
no in between either. It's
no, because he's definitely killing something, and we just don't know whether they deserved it or not.
That's like a frailty situation.
Yeah.
But Russell's cool. We did a little cross promotion. He hit me up and reached out, which was awesome. So I'm sure some of my backers came from him. So that was nice of him.
No, Russell's we can all learn a little bit from Russell. We have Baby Barbarian. This is another fantasy comedy, young adult / all ages. Basically, a kid sits on a chair that takes him to a land of all games and fun, or some semblance of that, where there are no rules, no work, and just a goofy comedy. And I really felt like, you had talked about what Daniel did in the artwork in the back, adding the artist on this is it looked like a Mad magazine, because in the foreground is all your plot, and in the background is insanity. A lot of fun, definitely cool, and good for young adults, and even a little bit younger, probably 7 and older, maybe even younger, but very cool little story. And I think the last one is Jack Holder's Legends of the Realm. And the cool thing about this one is Jack is kind of exploring what perspective means in a story. So you're kind of seeing the same thing happening from multiple perspectives, and seeing how the story morphs depending on who is seeing the action and who is telling the action. And like Jack said, it's not necessarily untrue when one person says it differently than another. So he's really looking into perspectives and kind of experimental in that way. And I'm really excited to see what they got.
One other one. She just launched, but she's a friend of the show too. The Alchemist of Aurelia.
Yes. MJ Massey, yes.
Yep, and it is I think number 3 of that series. So she does that one and another one. I think it's a Black Ball. Is that what it is?
Don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember. I'm not even drunk, and I don't remember. Yeah. So
it's just the football is distraction. That's all.
Well, yeah. So you know what, guys? I really appreciate it. I had a blast. I got to find out what happened. I don't have
dying to leave.
I know.
This is me distracted, guys. Can you imagine if I had been on my game?
Kevin, we've really got to dive deeper into this Claremont X-Men stuff, okay?
And